those eyes are gonna pop out of their damn skulls when they see this.
Everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm John, and today I'm here to actually talk to you guys about two films, both of them directed by Ty West, and those films are X and Pearl. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of movie reviews, 4K Blu-ray reviews, tech reviews, game reviews, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing to help us out more than by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So just to be safe, I'm going to put a spoiler warning up for this in case you want to know nothing about both of these movies, but in case you do, so this will be my last warning about spoilers. I might talk a little bit freely, I might have a little bit of loose lips on this, so I don't want to ruin these movies for anyone who hasn't seen them yet, because for me, I went into these as blind as I possibly could, and I was just blown away by them, so I love them very much, and if you can possibly go into that without knowing anything, I think you're in for a real treat when it comes to both of these films. So, with that being said, let's move on. So, earlier this year in March, A24 released X, directed by Ty West, written by Ty West, starring Mia Goth and Jenna Ortega, amongst many other actors, and this film felt very much like an homage to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It follows a group of characters as they are traveling through Houston, Texas, and they are going to spend the night at a boarding house of sorts that they are going to rent. The only thing that's different about these characters is they're shooting a smut film or a porn film, depending on what you want to call it. So just like in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they're traveling there by van and they end up on this Texas ranch. It's owned by an old couple, so an old man answers the door for them. He does not seem very happy that they're there, but you know, he'll take their money. He doesn't care what they do. He just, leave him alone, pretty much, be quiet, don't wake my wife, that whole kind of deal. And then these characters, they start what they came there to do. They start making a porno. And this is very much a slasher, very much follows slasher tropes, but it's done in such an A24, beautifully shot kind of way that it's very, it's not like a Friday the 13th. This is very much like taking, what you would think of the slasher genre and taking it into more of the modern age. Very much kind of like what the Fear Street trilogy did, but this is more kind of based in, instead of 80s horror, this is very much in that down and dirty, gritty 70s type of horror, very much like The Hills Have Eyes, The Last House on the Left, and most obviously the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that is exactly the kind of tone that I think they nailed, putting very much a modern twist on it, because everyone in this film does a great job acting. The direction is stunning. It's just a beautifully shot film. For those who don't know, Mia Goth actually plays two characters. In this film, she plays not only Maxine, who is the star of the porno that they're making, but she also plays and this is a huge spoiler, so if you don't want to go any further, she plays the old lady Pearl, who is actually the killer on this farm. That's also the title character for Pearl. Pearl is actually an origin story to X about Pearl and what made her this monster, because in this movie, she's just taking these people out one by one, obviously with help from her husband Howard, but this is a very, very elderly couple, and they clearly do not like these people very much for breaking the slasher rules. They're having sex, and that's one big problem with Pearl herself, is that her husband, unfortunately, can't have sex with her anymore, even though she still clearly wants it. At least that's what we think is really what her driving force is that she walks in and sees these characters having sex and making porn, and her herself, she can't get laid because she's either too elderly or her husband feels like he's going to die of a heart attack right on top of her. It becomes just this whole thing for her, and you think that's the reason why she's seeking revenge on all these people. And she's got some pretty good one-liners. One that I think tied perfectly back in the Pearl, because they actually explain this, where after she kills one of the characters, she says, I always hate blondes. And that actually comes back perfectly in Pearl, and it really fills in that gap, because what I did was I watched X last night, and then this morning, I went to the earliest screening I could possibly go to for Pearl. So I had X perfectly in my mind, and then I went into Pearl. And Pearl really is a perfect companion piece for X, because Pearl is going to fill in all those gaps that were left in X. Because you wouldn't think that X, which feels very much just like a throwaway slasher, definitely more elevated, could have been just nothing, just a one good slasher that we got this year that, a few people really noticed. But then we got into Pearl, and Pearl really took what was X, which I believe is an 8 out of 10 movie, and Pearl itself helps to elevate X to about a 9 out of 10 movie, because Pearl is actually one of the best films I've seen this year. By far. I loved Pearl. I walked out of that because unlike X, which is very much a slasher, Pearl is actually paying homage to, it does pay a little bit of an homage to Texas Chainsaw Massacre in some scenes, but it's more paying homage to early cinema. That's like, this film takes place in 1918, X takes place in 1979, so we're seeing the origins of Pearl and what her life is like now, and Maya Goth is back again to play that character. So Maya Goth is really the star of this entire thing so far, because not only is she playing Maxine and Pearl, but now she has to play the younger version of Pearl. So she's playing 3 different characters. She also co-wrote with Ty West Pearl, so she actually has her fingerprints all over this film. She did a phenomenal job. I know it'll never happen because they never nominate anybody from horror films, but Maya Goth 100% deserves an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. It'll never happen. That's just, unfortunately, the world we live in. Horror just doesn't get the same recognition as dramas do. Sometimes some things can seep in a little bit. We thought that we were going to get something a couple years ago for Toni Collette a few years ago for Hereditary, and if she couldn't get nominated, there's no way that Maya Goth gets nominated, even though she did a phenomenal job in this movie. In the middle of this movie has one of the best dialogues that I have seen on film in years. This film was really a character piece, so Maya Goth had to really show off her acting chops. She really carries the entire movie. It's really her movie. It's her just acting up a storm, just doing just a beautiful and wonderful performance. One of the best that I've seen all year. And there have been a lot of good acting performances this year, but hers just stands out in the crowd. I loved every second she was on screen, and she was on screen a lot. Now, one thing that's a big difference between the two films is that X, like I said, is very much a slasher, and then Pearl is very much a character piece. So it might feel very different going from X. If you're expecting like a real sequel to X, I don't think you're going to get that. It is not as violent. It is not really. It is still a slasher, but it's much more of a psychological thriller, I would say, and more of like a psychological slasher type of thing, because it really is just following the mind of Pearl and what makes her tick and what drove her to be this person. And that's really what they're diving into. Like, if you're one of those people that always wants to find out what motivates people to do monstrous things, that's really what they're exploring here. Pearl has a horrible mother who treats her just like pure garbage. Yes, she has her reasons, but Pearl doesn't understand those reasons. Now, you could argue, is it nature versus nurture? What is the reasoning for this? We see that her environment that she lives in, she just so desperately wants to escape, and we know from seeing X that that is just not going to happen. She is not going to get to escape this farm. So another character tells her, you got to make the best of it. Unfortunately for her, making the best of things is murdering everyone. She has no feeling. She pretty much just told her sister-in-law that she doesn't have what everyone else has. She's a serial killer. And she really just seeks revenge and tries to take away from people what she never got. That's what we saw in X. We thought in X that the reason she saw people having sex and she couldn't have sex, so that's what she was trying. She was jealous. It's all out of jealousy. She believes that she is owed something. She believes that she should be a star. She keeps bringing that up in this movie. And because she's not a rational person and she doesn't have the correct emotions like a regular person would, she is going around just killing anyone and everyone that she can. Pretty much anyone who stands in her way or she feels like will either rat on her or lacks caring for her, because she flies off the handle more than once in this film. And again, just a phenomenal performance by Maya Goth. I loved her performance. It really is one of the best performances of the year. I can't sell it more than I already am right now, and I'm sure you've heard this from many, many other critics who have all said the same exact thing, that she is a star. This is a star-making performance from her. And obviously she helped co-write Pearl, so you know that she can also write as well. And she really understands the character that she had to portray. And again, she portrays 3 different characters, and she has to really act those characters out. They're all different. Yes, Pearl is a younger version and an older version, but they are very different. And then because we get to see her mother, we get to see the older version of Pearl turns out to be a very much a bitter old woman, and she even says to her mother in this movie, I don't want to end up like you, but yet you somehow do. I guess even worse, because you actually kill people. So there's a real character study here in both of these films that is just awesome. Now, it does look like we're going to get the end of the Pearl character, because if you do stay to the end of the credits for Pearl, just like with X, you get a trailer for the next movie. But unlike Pearl, which was shot back-to-back with X, even if it was in secret, Maxine, they're developing right now, so Maxine is going to be the third of this trilogy, and if you saw X, at the end of X, Maxine is the final girl, and she gets away. She's the one who kills Pearl, and it looks like we're taking place, it says Los Angeles 1985 on the screen, and it looks like it's shot on VHS, so I assume we're going to get into like the 80s porno, when we shifted from shooting porn on film to shooting on VHS or Betamax tapes in the 80s, and people really started to watch porn at home. That looks like, because that's one big through line through the entire trilogy, is porn. Actually, Pearl, they actually show the original first ever smut film that was ever shot in the actual movie. So that's very interesting for anyone who's a fan of cinema, whether it be regular or porn, whatever, you could definitely tell that Ty West loves movies no matter what they are, and he's wearing it on his sleeve in all these movies, and it looks like he's going to be doing that again with Maxine. So I think we're in for a treat because he's a 2 for 2 for me. I love Pearl actually more than X, and X really was great, so I can recommend both of these films if you haven't seen them yet. I'd give X, I would give that a 9 out of 10. And then I would give Pearl right behind it because, like I said, it's slightly better. I would give Pearl a 9.5 out of 10. One of the best movies I've seen this year. Obviously I just saw it, so I want to let it linger a little bit. Right now I'm riding the high of seeing a good movie. So I don't know where it'll end up on my final year rankings, but for right now, it really is a good time. And if you can catch Pearl in theaters before it's out of there, I can recommend doing that. I saw X actually on an Amazon Prime stream. I rented it for $4.99, I believe, and I saw it in 4K, and it looked pretty good. Matt actually bought the Blu-ray. He said the Blu-ray was a little bit blurry, so actually right now, the stream is better than the actual Blu-ray, but I was talking to somebody on Twitter, and they believe that they'll probably release A24, that being a 4K trilogy set with X, Pearl, and Maxine when they're finally done with all three of them. And I'm really fingers crossed on that because I would love to see all three of these in 4K. Even though Maxine, sight unseen, I'm going into it already thinking it's going to be a good movie. That's how high I am on these two films. So if you can, definitely check them both out and let us know, what did you think of X and Pearl? Leave your answers in the comment section below. And while you're at it, why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then I want you all to go out and tell all your friends.